Is it me, or are we looking back on Euro 2020 and it's seemed that it wasn't as great as maybe we should see it as?
Well, I think there are a few reasons for that. First of all, the tournament crashed to an end with the disappointment of the penalties. We all want to move on from that very quickly. The league season almost started very soon. Some of the players were back in training with their clubs soon after, and that's because the schedule in all sports was condensed to some degree. But I know what you're saying. I just look at the final and I think to myself, it's almost like England found themselves in a position that they thought, wow, we've never been in this before.
Yeah.
We've played expansive football throughout the tournament. We're up against a decent side, but we think we can, based on our defensive record, hold out against Italy and stop them scoring. And almost like, I wouldn't say throwing the towel is not the right way to describe it. It was obviously a very competitive game, but having taken the lead through Luke Shaw's goal after 2 minutes, it seemed to me that Gareth Southgate made the decision to regress the team and go defensive in an effort to protect something that, let's face it, would have allowed him to make history on behalf of England for the first time, as you said in the top there, since 1966. What it did, though, was reignite my faith in international football. Mm-hmm. We're fed up with international football, and sometimes, aren't we? Because we see substandard opponents. We've seen it since the Euros.
But we love a tournament.
We love the
finals of a tournament. It's one thing.
That's what I mean.
When we have those, we have the qualifiers, but in a tournament, it's a different.
We've had some disappointing ones in the last 20 years, though. Let's be perfectly honest. The last two have been pretty decent.
Yeah.
But this one was quite good. Nothing ignites the English public, or the British public even, if you include all the four nations, like a national tournament, an international tournament. No, nothing else. It's not Liverpool or Man United or Chelsea or Tottenham. None of those teams. It doesn't make the fans go out and buy barbecues from Tesco's, does it? Whereas international football does.
Speak for yourself, Aidan, but I've got loads in the garage. But do we look at it as a success? I mean, obviously we've got to build on this, the Euros, and we've got, this time next year we're going to be looking at the World Cup.
Yeah.
And how much of what we've seen, is it down to the players or is it down to Gareth Southgate? Because people have complained about Gareth, and like you said about the tactics in the final, that maybe we could have actually gone for the killer blow, and instead of sitting back and playing the Italians at their own game. But we've got to look at it.
Yeah, well, look, we have to look at it as a success because we haven't been to a final since 1966, obviously. However, some people might say, well, those players, maybe we could have achieved a little bit more. But then I prefer to look to next year when, with the recent experience of that tournament and the heartbreak as well, the players don't look affected by it. They haven't been coming out giving interviews saying that, we've been psychologically scarred by this. Most players look back at that tournament and think it was a positive experience. I had a chat with someone recently, and I think they've got a real chance, England, of winning the World Cup next year. It just depends how they can handle the conditions, of course. But the stadiums will be air-conditioned.
Sure.
I don't think Italy will be quite as good next time as they were this time. They've got a more senior squad. One or two of those will probably drop off the radar, you would think, by the time that tournament comes around. England, meanwhile, are going from strength to strength.
Yeah.
You look at the youth, the average age of that squad, it's actually quite low. You're actually going to get a situation where you've got players who are around about 23, 24, 25, who may have 40 caps under their belt by the time we take on that tournament. So I think it bodes well for the future. If you look at cycles as well within international football, if you look at, say, the German cycle in the 2000s, so they really sort of started to show their potential around about 2006. They probably, they started getting into finals and semi-finals for a sustained period of time, but couldn't quite get themselves over the line to win that trophy. They managed it in 2014, 8 years later. Sometimes a really successful period, with the exception possibly of Spain winning three tournaments in a row, which is really exceptional. You might see just one tournament come out of England, and we'd be absolutely delighted with that, wouldn't we?